Some historians, mostly Western historians, like to mention Hisham's reign as the tipping point. So they were going into Europe until Hisham's reign, and they reached Poitiers, the Battle of Tours, when Charles Martel manages to defeat the Muslims. I say defeat because, according to some historians, it was a minor battle. It wasn't a major battle. It was a minor battle. The Muslims lost, and that was a sign for the Europeans that this is the cutoff point from this moment onwards. The Muslims will not enter further inland, and from now on we go the opposite in the attack. So it was like a turning point for them as well. And so his reign triggers again that decline of the Muslim empire, the Muslim influence in Europe, and the increase and the upward momentum of the Western empires coming east. Very, very important battle. Right, so Hisham's death marked a watershed moment in the history of the Umayyads, signaling the beginning of a spiraling decline for the empire, as leadership would be transferred to the grandchildren of Abdul Malik. The grandchildren of Abdul Malik, and the great-grandchildren, if we were to combine them as one family, of Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. And this would bring nothing but instability, chaos, disorder. There was only 7 years left in the dynasty. So when Hisham dies, there's only 7 years left between his death and the Abbasid apocalypse. Only 7 years. And in that 7 years, you have 4 rulers. 4 or 5 rulers. Yeah. So that's how quickly everything collapsed when he died. Just 7 years. And it so happens to coincide with his, you could say, his children's generation taking reign. So now we want to look at this statement here in light of Ibn Khaldun. So Ibn Khaldun says to us in his Muqaddimah, it reaches its end, the dynasty or the kingdom reaches the end in a single family within 4 successive generations. So this means, because we know, for example, the Ottomans, we know the Mughals, certainly it's one empire, but there are various pockets, various families, okay, under one umbrella of the Ottomans or one umbrella of the Mughals, for example. So he's saying here within one family. So this is like one dynasty. One dynasty generally lasts for 4 generations. Each generation, he explains it later on in his Muqaddimah, is about 40 years. And he takes the 40 from the fact that in the Quran, we are told that Musa alayhi salam, when he traveled with his people into the wilderness, it took 40 years for them of wandering around until the elders who disobeyed him died off and a new generation was born. So for him, 40 is one generation. That's how long it takes for Allah to replace the people, 40. So it takes 40 years in one family, one dynasty, for things to go from beginning to end. That's approximately 160 years. The Umayyads didn't last that long. Okay, so it reaches its end within 4 successive generations. The 4 generations he then goes to explain are characterized and categorized as follows. You have the builders, you have the inheritors, you have the successors, you have the destroyers. The builders, also the founders of the dynasty, this is the first generation. This is where there's a lot of asabiyah, group cohesive identity, purpose, drive and hunger. They are savage in this generation. They're hungry to seize and acquire and to achieve. So the builders are those who understand the cost of leadership, what it took us to be where we are today. They remember the sacrifices. They understand that this is not a right, it's a privilege. So they are far more likely to acknowledge every little item of privilege than those who come after them. So these are the founding fathers, effectively. Then the second generation, who comes straight after them, are the inheritors. These are the sons of the founders who met and who lived and who were tutored by and coached by their fathers. So they had direct connection with their fathers, which means they also inherit from their fathers the ethos and the ethics of leadership. They understand the family struggle to get to where they were. So although they inherited the kingdom, they still understand the value of the sacrifice made for them to be where they are today. So they are also a very principled people. Okay, So they are not as great as their fathers, because it takes a lot more to establish an empire than to inherit one. It takes a lot more to establish an empire than to inherit one. So they're not the same as their fathers, but they are still great people because they're very close to that generation. The third generation then are the successors. These are people who, they've come 3 generations later. They may never have met the founders, but they've heard about them. Okay, they just inherited it from the inheritors, so they haven't really had to fight for what they have. They're born into privilege, and they are trained from early age to follow the customs and the ways of their family. So this is why you have aristocracy. You're born into the blue blood, and you just effectively, you follow because that's how you've been raised, how to eat, how to speak, where to marry, where to go, so on and so forth. You inherit the information. You're a successor, but you are still detached from the reality of what happened 2 generations before. The final generation then are the destroyers. These are the wreckers. These are the people who have no connection whatsoever to the initial struggle that came before. They believe themselves superior by default, simply because they are who they are. They have the name that they have. They're born to the people they are born to, the family. So by default, they believe they are inherently superior just because they are who they are. Okay? So these people become arrogant, haughty, cruel, corrupt, licentious, and many other adjectives I can muster up right now. They become effectively entitled people who have no cause for concern, not connected to the real world, and believe that they are owed everything. They just believe they're better. Okay? This arrogance and flippant attitude will destroy the dynasty. It will destroy him. I think the Buddha said one of the enlightenment points was earning reward without working for it is destruction. Yeah. Earning something that you haven't worked for is a path to destruction. Which is why even if a father is Allah has blessed him with a lot of resources and wealth or connections, you destroy your children if you give them everything without them having to earn it. You have to find the ways to make them earn privileges. It's not because you're tight-fisted or that you don't have the means. No, they need to understand the value of earning something. If everything comes to them easily, they don't have to make any effort, you're destroying them. You're not building in them resilience and commitment and loyalty and honesty and these principles that they need to have to maintain what they have. If everything comes to them, they become arrogant, detached from reality, and effectively the family legacy is destroyed. Okay? There are many studies into this, by the way. Many studies into this. Millionaire families, how long does it take for them to become broke again? Right? I don't want to get into that now. That's maybe for a Muqaddimah program. Fascinating stuff. So this is where we're going to take our analysis for the Umayyad kingdom. Okay.